Today I'll talk about, as you mentioned, how Lithuania and how GovTech Lab is innovating Lithuania's public sector. So I'll talk a bit about how we started the GovTech Lab, why we did that, and how we usually work, and also provide a few case studies of what specifically we do. So in one of the first slides, in the next slide, I'm showing how traditionally the public sector works. So traditionally, we have this kind of assumption that public sector has a monopoly of knowledge around what kind of challenges it has and what kind of solutions could be used for that. So they simply contract out that to the private sector, and then there's an idea that private sector can autonomously create such a solution. So while this might be true for very simple challenges like, what kind of notebooks should I buy or how should I paint the walls of the agency, when we come to more complex challenges, that does not work anymore. And what we actually did is shown on the next slide is not just contracting out the solution, but co-creation. So we need to involve as many different stakeholders to actually figure out what's actually the challenge and how can we build the solution that works for everyone. So usually we do not expect people in the public sector to know, we expect them to know their specific policy area, and there's no need that they know details of how AI or blockchain works. But that's why we have the innovators community and startup community to provide them the technological answers to the policy questions. So what we're trying to do here in Lithuania with the GovTech Lab are kind of two key things shown in the next slide. So one is trying to ensure that that public sector officials are capable of innovating. So they trust the process of innovation so that they can know that they're not going to be penalized for trying to look for out-of-the-box solutions. And in addition, what we're trying to do is, once we look for these out-of-the-box solutions, we have to make sure that there are actually companies and entrepreneurs that have these ideas. So making sure that we diversify the players in the market. So if you move a few slides next, what we're actually doing here in the GovTech Lab is trying to cover three kind of main areas. So one is trying to match GovTech challenges with ideas. So we're trying to work with the public sector to understand what are actually the challenges that the public sector could kind of employ the help of startups and SMEs to solve. The second bit is how we accelerate these teams in the private sector among the startup community to actually be capable of serving public sector. Because traditionally, the approach that I mentioned before, of course, if the only thing that we're looking for in the market participant is just carry out the instruction, that naturally leads that the main quality that we're looking for a supplier is stability. But now if we accept that the public sector does not have the monopoly of knowledge, then we have to have our kind of key value becomes innovation and these creativity of the suppliers, but we still need to ensure that they're capable enough of running the business and building their startups, building the communities, because we cannot risk one day just not having a good enough system to distribute the benefits or something like that. And the third and the last thing that we're trying to do is to build the GovTech community, because what we see is that there are a lot of people both within the public sector and in the startup community that are kind of spread around, and they have these ideas and desire to not only, for example, build a profitable startup, but also build a startup that has that social impact. And in the public sector, we see these people that want to look for innovative solutions in the different areas, but they're just, they feel alone in their institutions. So what we're trying to do is kind of build a network of them so that they feel that they can rely on each other, and that kind of helps them in this kind of journey for looking for out-of-the-box solutions. And the specific process and the main process that we do and that we kind of try to organize all these three activities in, it's called GovTech Challenge Series. So as I mentioned before, one of the key things is that we try to give public sector a specific process that they can trust and follow, and this will look for innovative solutions. So GovTech Challenge Series is kind of this 4-stage process that leads to a creation of prototypes and of GovTech solutions. So we start with stage 1, which is challenge selection. So we have an open call for challenges among the public sector institutions, and we see which kind of challenges would be interesting for startups, which could be impactful, which actually require innovative solutions, and then which institutions are actually determined enough and interested enough to work with us through the process. Then we have a second stage where we have an open call for teams and ideas. So we're not necessarily saying that this has to be only a very new startup or very old company. We're open to everyone, and we're looking if there are ideas from the tech side of how to solve the specific challenge, and also if the teams, they're also interested in working with the public sector and they're up for the challenge. So once we have the selected specific teams for the challenges, then we kind of match them with the public sector institution. And if I could ask, just move a few slides ahead, that would be great. That for the specific process, just a few more to the a bit later stage. Yeah, next one. Yeah, perfect. So once we have selected teams, we kind of pair them with the public sector institutions. And what's very innovative in this, that we have an accelerator where both public sector and the startups work together. So usually what you have in an accelerator is just helping startups to kind of build their product or sell their product. What we're doing here is trying to kind of transform and change that, the Silicon Valley kind of motto of move fast and break things into move fast but co-create things. So we're not trying to break these, public sector. What we're trying to do is create and kind of additional ideas. So we have a 10-week accelerator where we have workshops and like consultations with the experts, so we can make sure that the startups that are working here build a product that actually reflects the need of a public sector institution, but then also that those ways of working at the public sector, ways of working, in the private sector and the startups could be through that accelerators and working together, kind of transferred to the public sector as well. And then once we have, at the end of the accelerator, we have this demo day where we show all these different solutions, and then that kind of moves to the implementation stage, so like public procurement and so on. So now we just finished our second GovTech Challenge series. We started the first one in 2019, which we call Pilot GovTech Challenge series, because we had only one challenge that we worked on to experiment and see if the process works. And now this year we had 9 challenges and 9 solutions. So this process is kind of the way that the public sector institutions can experiment without being kind of penalized for doing something wrong, but also for startups. Many of the startups that work with us, they might have already thought about building a solution for a specific challenge, but this is an opportunity for them to have first-hand knowledge from the public sector institutions, but also test their product with the institution to see if it works, test with real data, and so on. So in the next slides, I'll talk about a few case studies that we had. So the first one from the very first, the Pilot GovTech Challenge series, we had a Bank of Lithuania where they proposed a challenge of how they could automate data collection from market participants. So what that means is how could we make sure that fintechs or banks don't have to make a PDF reports from their data, send it to Bank of Lithuania, and then Bank of Lithuania has to kind of extract the data back from that. How we can make sure that this data is shared on more lower level. What actually happened is that they selected two teams, one like very small startup and one more experienced IT company, and they cooperated together in creating a prototype solution. And now they're consulting more with the actual market participants, banks, and so on, to see if they would use it, because the main idea is that the ones that are being regulated should use the tool as well. The next case study is from our most recent GovTech Challenge series, so the second GovTech Challenge series. And here we have had our ministry and the journalistic ethics inspectorate proposing a challenge of how we could detect and monitor hate speech on the internet. So what they do now is quite simple solution, where they have like a keyword selected, and then they have to check, but there are thousands and thousands of different cases, and of course no one can check that many. So they were looking for more AI-based solution that could more intelligently detect hate speech, and they actually cooperated with a startup called Cocreation, and they created a prototype, and they just presented the prototype at the end of December, and they already received funding for 100,000 euros to further develop the product that could be then used across different agencies in the private sector as well, the companies that are trying to monitor and limit the hate speech on the internet and so on. And the final one that I chose is also the case study from our very recent, the second GovTech Challenge series, and it is about how to create a school public health monitoring tool. Because at the moment, what we see is that different programs for schools, such as like anti-smoking or anti-bullying, are just kind of it's one size fits all approach, where every school gets the same kind of programs and the same measures to tackle with the problems that they have. But what we can actually see from the data, that different schools have different issues, and that these programs and measures should be tailored to the specific school. So what the Vilnius Health Bureau was looking for is, how you can create a kind of a health pass of school, and how we can actually see what are the main issues in specific schools. So our startup Green Time created this kind of both from methodological and technical side this prototype for the health pass, and they actually already passed through the procurement stage as well, and so on. So it's not just some of the challenges sometimes remain at the more experimentation stage, but some of them, what we are very happy about is that they move from just the GovTech Challenge series is for challenges where you don't know if the solution exists. You would not be able to just go out and buy it in the market, because you wouldn't know how to like write up your public procurement documents. Because of course people there don't know how the AI algorithm specifically works and how it should be written so that it detects hate speech. But GovTech Challenge series allows them to kind of figure out what are the opportunities of solving the challenge, and what we hope that by the end of GovTech Challenge series, they're given the kind of the answer. So either it solves the challenge, or if it doesn't. For us, if it doesn't solve the challenge, it's still the answer, because at least they look for it, and maybe there has to be a different approach. Maybe they have to try to solve it, the specific challenge, not from technical side, but like more from policy side, or any other challenges might arise. So what we're trying to do now is kind of making sure that we can scale this. So now we run it as a batch of around like 10 challenges. We're now at the process of starting the third GovTech Challenge series. But our question for the next steps is how we make sure that we have around 4,000 institutions in the public sector in Lithuania, how we make sure that they all are aware of the process, how we make sure that they all can run this process, because for us, the best, kind of the goal or the end goal of GovTech Lab is to make sure that no one needs us because everyone can do this by themselves. So that's very quickly how we're trying to change Lithuania's public sector. We're trying to focus on creating a process of how they can look for innovation, trying to build the community that can strengthen each other, and also just provide the knowledge and confidence in terms of looking for these different innovative solutions.